Love that voice.
Good evening. It's 7:32 on the 16th of March, and welcome to our legislative session. And we'll do the flag and the Pledge of Allegiance, excuse me, and then we'll get going with the meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Okay, Trustee Fritchie.
Click the wrong one. I'm here.
Trustee Lopez.
Here.
Trustee White.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Casada.
Present.
And Mayor Levin.
Present.
Great.
Okay. So do we have, and I believe we do, trustee announcements first?
I can start. Good evening, everyone. Very good to see you. So I have two announcements highlighting two very worthy organizations in our community. The first one is one that I previewed last week. So on Friday in Market Square, we're going to have an event that's organized by Neighbors Link that is honoring excluded workers. And so here's some information about that. So the state, Senate, and Assembly one house budget proposals did include coverage for all, which is health insurance for undocumented folks, but did not include the extra $3 billion for the Excluded Workers Fund or Excluded No More, which is unemployment insurance for the undocumented. So there will be a rally this Friday at 11 in Market Square here in the Village, where we plan to talk about the only way to really honor these excluded workers is by closing gaps in our safety net, that we must keep fighting for legislation to protect workers. Coverage for all is an important step in terms of health equity, which we learned a lot about during the pandemic, and we will keep the fight going for the final budget. So I'll be saying a few remarks during Friday's event, and I hope to see you all there. It's going to be a beautiful day on Friday. So if you have the flexibility to come support that rally this Friday at 11 a.m. In Market Square, that would be great. So that's number one. And then number two is another very worthwhile organization in our community is doing some fundraising. So no matter how worthwhile your mission, your bills come all the same. And so Home Run Against Drugs is an organization in our community that many of us have familiarity with and have actually already supported for this current campaign. They do a lot of programming with our youth, and with the Youth Bureau really standing up. We're having a laser focus on the youth in our community, and with cannabis legislation that is recently passed, that is really triangulating youth, drugs, and where our focus is on the board, which is drugs for adults who want them and none for the youth. That's basically the bumper sticker here. Okay, so we know the importance of making sure that youth in our community have great alternatives to any kind of negative behavior, and that includes education and alternative options with respect to drugs. So Home Run Against Drugs is fundraising right now in order to be able to do the programming that they do all year long and be in the space that they are in. Their current goal is $40,000 and they're at $35,000. So I know that the Board of Trustees, Village of Ossining community can help raise that final 5K to keep that program going. And so it's very easy. You just go to homerunagainstdrugs.org, all one word. It's a URL, and you can donate there. So it's a pretty tight timeline between now and next Tuesday. They need to raise the rest of the $5,000. And so if you have some money that you can donate to that, that would be awesome. And if you can tell a friend that's been spending their money poorly with things, you know who these people are, who are just like Amazon shopping like crazy, make them balance out their karma by giving to Home Run Against Drugs by going to the website, homerunagainstdrugs.org. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Lopez. Any other announcements?
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that, Home Run Against Drugs. Thank you, Amar, for talking about that. It's a great organization. They're having, as part of their fundraising, an event tomorrow night at the Boathouse, a fundraising, kind of a pop-up concert by Mike and Miriam Risco, and they're going to be doing acoustic, and you can come in, enjoy, have dinner, have a drink, enjoy the show, and then hopefully donate some money to Home Run Against Drugs. So, and plus it's the Boathouse, and they've reopened for the season. So, and it's St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, right?
Yes,
Yes, it is.
Something I usually try and ignore, but
that's why their flyer was in that lime green color that caught my
Right.
attention.
so anyway, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So please try and come down. Thanks.
Thank you, Dana. Anyone else? Okay. I just wanted to add, you know, for me this week is I think for many of us an important week, and the fact that on March 13th, and it's somewhere around this week, that a couple of years ago that basically everything in this area shut down because of COVID. It seems years ago. In fact, one of the things that COVID for me has done is I lose all track of time. Having worked so much from home, I did go to my job, which is at a community center that was very deeply affected here in Westchester by COVID. We put together a COVID garden and sort of memorializing the event, expecting that 20, 30 years from now, instead of having the future village historian track back to see what's going on, why not realize that we should memorialize history as it's happening, because it's an important moment. I don't think any of us thought it was going to last 2 years, and it's still going. There are still people being hospitalized. There are still people getting sick. There are still people suffering from after effects from a year ago. And many of us, really all of us, have had deaths of friends, family, colleagues, you know, just name it. It brings to mind, and I wrote about this in the mayor's note, really how this community comes together, whether it's Home Run Against Drugs and taking care, you know, I sometimes forget it's about an anti-drug thing, because so much of what they do is actually simply take care of the most vulnerable in our community, and children. During the summer, after schools, I sometimes forget it's really an anti-drug thing, to be honest. I'm glad it was brought up, because I know that they do just so much more than that, but there are actually more than 220 registered nonprofits in Ossining. That's a lot, by the way, just in case somebody wants to have a perspective. And so many of them came together 2 years ago at this time, not to mention the police, the OVAC, fire department, and the staff and elected officials. So for me, this week sort of marks a time that a few years ago I would not be marking, but I think going forward, at least for many of us, will be a week to be sort of remembered. What's really fun though about today and tomorrow is it's St. Patty's Day, and I actually looked up what it's about, and anybody can Google it. I'm not here to discuss. It's also a Jewish holiday. Purim starts tonight. The synagogues are hopping with happy people. It's actually a very happy celebratory event, and it too is about acts of kindness in the community at large, related to giving of food and just being very joyful. So I really feel this week was a tremendously difficult week of decisioning. I remember Karen calling me, and you know, so many of the folks, and deciding when to close things up and what to do, and people were dying and hospitalized. And 2 years later, here we are discussing St. Patty's Day. We're discussing rallies that are public, that are going to make a difference in the world. We're discussing, you know, happy events. So I am like very excited that we have small businesses that are reopening, that we're having not-for-profits who've been so burdened, sort of coming back and doing what they're best at and moving forward. So for me, this is a time where everybody should be looking at what events are going on and attending as many events locally as possible. Excuse me, we're also, the village manager is going to talk about some progress being made in other ways, and I know in the agenda is also about the parklets to help our small businesses remain with their excuse me, with outdoor dining, etc. So I think these are all sort of positive, happy events and something to be joyful for. And remember that so many of us are involved in social justice and really looking to do good things in the state of New York, in Ossining and beyond. So Trustee Lopez, the other thing I thought might be important, and I don't have the flyer in front of me, Ossining is a stop in a rally, right? It's bigger than Ossining. If you could just share for a moment, so there might be people working in another part of the community that might be able to leave work for an hour and participate, even if it's not in Ossining. I don't have the flyer in front of me. I was sort of looking for it a few minutes ago.
Yes, absolutely. So it is a rally that starts in New York City, goes all the way north to Albany, and is collecting folks along the way. And so if folks want to follow the hashtag excluded no more, that is the hashtag that is being used to kind of follow throughout the entire event. And then following Neighbors link on social media, you'll be able to see what the play-by-play looks like. But that's the overall event hashtag is excluded no more.
Great, great. I just want to point out that Osning's involved, but you know, some things are even bigger than us. So encouraging folks to be involved. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next item. Ms. Donnelly.
Okay, administrative reports, Village Manager Totori.
Good evening, everybody. So for some time now, almost in every one of my reports, we talk about things that we're doing to improve quality of life in the village, be it through code enforcement or sanitation, other things that we're doing throughout the village. But tonight we have a special treat. We have a presentation by the Code Enforcement Task Force, and that's headed up by our planner, Jaime Martinez, and our head building inspector, Joseph Agostinelli. And they'll be presenting, but we also have coordination with other departments as well. So Paul Frioli, Director of Public Works, and Chief Sylvester are here too to weigh in. They've been involved in this, as have Corporation Counsel and the manager's office, and multiple people throughout the village staff working collectively to make sure that we are not looking at things too narrowly, that we're breaking down silos that may exist and really putting more eyes, more capacity, generating more awareness among staff about things we can all be doing to keep our community healthy, clean, and safe. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jaime Martinez and Joseph Agostinelli.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Board of Trustees, for having us today to come in and speak. So we, as always, we have a presentation that we're going to share with you, and we'll go over the details and kind of let you know a little bit about where we are in the process right now. So just bear with me. So first of all, a little overview of the Code Enforcement Task Force. It's currently consists of representatives of the following departments: Building Department, primarily with assistance from the Planning Department, Public Works, Sanitation, Police, and the Parks Department, with active involvement, obviously, from the Corp Counsel and the Village Manager's Office. The mission and goal of the project at the beginning of this, and you may recall this is what we told you when we came to you, many months ago to tell you about this group, is to identify and remedy code enforcement issues throughout the village with a focus on residential districts, substandard housing, and/or blighted properties. The goal was to improve the lives of residents by eliminating slum housing conditions. So giving you a little background on what we've done and where we've gone so far. For the task force walkthroughs, we've covered 5 different streets that have been observed by the task force, and we've looked at 143 separate parcels on Yale Avenue, Denny Street, Dale Avenue, Aqueduct Street, and Ann Street. We have 4 additional streets so far identified for upcoming walkthroughs, and those include James Street, William Street, Everett Avenue, and Edward Street. From that, we've identified a bunch of different violations. So remember that number, 143 parcels. Of those 143 parcels, we had 42 separate properties that were proactively identified with safety or property maintenance issues, or which were in need of a fire safety inspection. So in some cases, multiple issues were identified. The breakdown is 10 properties with safety issues, 22 properties with property maintenance issues, and 10 properties that needed fire inspections. And this is a map of the areas that we focused on. So you can see kind of that's the Aqueduct, Denny, Yale, Ann Street, and Dale Avenue, sort of the central part of the village. So yeah, 10 safety issues, 22 property maintenance issues, and 10 fire inspections. So from the safety and maintenance, these issues are the primary focus of the walkthroughs, but the goal of the task force is really to see, at the end of the day, the goal is to see these violations resolved, right? So it's not just about identifying problems, but it's about getting people to fix those problems and improve the conditions of the area. In many cases, fortunately, violations were resolved shortly after the property owners, was made aware of the issue. And this is a couple of examples, and Joe can kind of go into the detail because Joe's in charge of showing the actual, the property owners what to do in these instances.
So what we did is we identified maintenance issues on some of these properties. We took notes, took pictures. Code enforcement would send out orders to remedy. In a number of the cases, as you could see in some of the pictures, the homeowners just complied, got some of these items done where they had some broken windows. Some of the tenants replaced them. Some of the issues we had, like where this pool was there with no permit on it, there was some danger where there was you could see an extension cord that was running close to the top of the water in the pool there. When it was brought to the attention of the owner, he wasn't aware that his tenant had put that up and immediately had it removed because he didn't want to have any safety issues on the property. Some of the properties were that same property where they had a storage space underneath the stairs, but the door opened out right up into the sidewalk, which was very close to the sidewalk, and any individual walking across the sidewalk, if somebody came out of the storage area there, could hit some pedestrian on the sidewalk, but that was corrected immediately. Some of the cases, the people received OTRs. Some of them are still open OTRs. A few of them went to court appearance tickets, but not too many, maybe about 5 or 6 of them. But for the most part, the ones that we did, the original ones, which in this case was Yale Avenue, Aqueduct, a lot of them were taken care of already. There was a couple on Aqueduct where some of the business there had barbed wire fences, which weren't allowed. They were in a T-zone. Barbed wire fences aren't really allowed in any district, but they complied and removed them. So we didn't have, a teenager or kid who may have tried to climb the fence and get injured. Some stormwater issues where people were just dumping their stormwater right out into the village right away. In the wintertime, they were freezing over in ice conditions, and they removed the piping and diverted some of the stormwater to other locations on their property. We were able to address a lot of things that we could see from the walk through on the street. Some were where we assumed, we needed to do a fire inspection on some of the buildings, and we sent the notice out, and fire inspections were performed. Some of the violations were identified. The second walkthrough through the fire inspections, they complied and corrected some of the issues within the building. So, I mean, there's not 100% perfection where everybody just complied with it, but if we were able to get, 60-70% of the issues that we had corrected, they were identified, and the homeowners were positively going forward to correcting some of them. And the ones that aren't corrected, we're still working with them to get the corrections done, or like I said, some of them have received court appearance tickets, but we're in process of trying to get them remedied.
So getting into program benefits, why a task force? So overall, the task force is creating more efficient code and sanitation enforcement to encourage compliance. The departmental coordination fosters collaboration and the unified team approach to identifying and fixing these issues. Staff capacity is focused and solution oriented, and walking as a group has provided a unique opportunity for community engagement and a forum for positive interaction with residents during which they can raise concerns and witness the village's commitment to improving neighborhoods. So, going on to next steps, right? So for the building department, we got some stuff that's not necessarily directly with, out of the code enforcement task force, but is part of the next steps overall for code compliance issues and quality of life. For the building department, there's going to be increased staffing. So there's going to be 2 additional code enforcement officers coming on board. One actually started a couple days ago. That'll bring the total up to 4 total. Also going to be filling the assistant building inspector positions. Inspection and code enforcement service will now include Saturdays. Spanish speaking capacity is going to be increased in the in that department now. So it's been doubled already with Joe being the only building code official. Now we have 2 with the new person who just came in. For the Department of Public Works, DPW is going to be working on assisting with the issuance of sanitation tickets, which is fantastic. And so for the 6-month plan, what we're going to focus on right now is scheduling 6, obviously 6 more walkthroughs in other areas of the village, coordination with the Parks Department over the warmer months with a focus on public space sanitation improvements, an increased focus on the vacant building issues that we have in the village, coordinated clean streets efforts to include park sanitation, code enforcement, and police department involvement. And then other things that are being done are improved sanitation efforts with the big belly deployment, the coordination of sanitation efforts with building and business owners, and of course, evaluate and readjust as necessary. And that's it. So
just to touch on the positions, we did just this Monday, 3rd code enforcement officer started working here. That individual will be is working Tuesday to Saturday once she gets acclimated a little bit with the procedures of what we do. She's bilingual, so we have that person who can speak Spanish and English. When we hire an assistant building inspector, that person, we're looking for hiring Tuesday to Saturday as well. If we can get somebody who's bilingual, it'd be nice. But one of the 2 that we will be interviewing, one of them we're going to ask to try to make sure that person's bilingual. And by having an assistant building inspector on Saturday, will give us 6 days also providing building inspections that can be performed. So many homeowners, that are working and they're work in the city and they can't do Monday to Friday at the hours that we're open to the public, we can offer them Saturday. A lot of contractors that are doing commercial projects require a number of more inspections, so we can add also Saturday to that. So the goal is to have bilingual and to have people here 6 days for the public, and instead of just the 5 that we have currently. So I think that's one of the ways that we're trying to provide more services for the community.
Great. Thank you all. Great presentation. I'm sure there will be comments from the trustees, questions, etc. So who would like to start? No one?
I can start.
Okay.
I want to start by thanking the task force for the presentation and the work. I actually live right in that area, and so I'm very familiar with the area and am excited that this move is happening. So I would say, first of all, my sense is that this is one of those we have to walk before we can run kind of situations, right? We're getting a sense of what are the patterns of the kinds of issues that we're seeing, and you've already talked about orders to remedy and things like that for some of the immediate things that you see. But this is more of like a gardening kind of situation where these things are going to likely pop up again. And so my first question is, what is the ongoing plan for addressing some of the code enforcement issues that we see in the hotspot areas in the village?
Joe, do you want to take this, or do you want me to?
If you want to answer, and then I can follow up with you, it's up to you.
So, you know, in discussions with Joe, and again, this is, I'm speaking, but this is really Joe's department. He's over this department, but part of the plan is to, you know, because of the Saturday service, there's going to be an opportunity to use that Saturday service as a time to really spend more time in a proactive manner. And so because of capacity issues, when you don't have enough staff, a lot of times the code enforcement officers are really just chasing issues that have been brought to them. Once you have enough staff, you can start to go after things a little more proactively. So it allows you the time to go out. And that's kind of one of the biggest lessons from the task force, right? If you go out and look for issues, you know, the point is you're trying to catch issues so you can get them fixed. But if you're only reacting to issues that are presented to you, either through complaints or some other sort of referral, then you're sort of reacting to what's given. The Saturday service and the additional code enforcement capacity, you know, allow more time to be spent proactively.
Yeah, I mean, and also like, you know, previously sanitation would start early. They start 6:30 in the morning. Sanitation foreman would send us over the complaints of, you know, sanitation issues. But having him to participate in issuing those tickets, starting out early in the morning, starts actually an enforcement that starts at 6 rather than 9 o'clock for sanitation issues. And, you know, not having a code enforcement officer just following up behind sanitation start in the morning to go back and reissue the tickets to do that allows me to be able to use the code enforcement officers now to actually be proactive and assign, okay, one person is handling fire inspections, another one is, you know, watching around the village for other maintenance issues, maybe contractors who are doing work that should be getting permits for them. Another officer handling, you know, Section 8 inspections and, you know, doing maybe, you know, inspections that we have to do for the clerk's office for their licensing. So, you know, expanding this a little bit more to more people's involvement in it will allow us to do more follow-up on some of the issues like Trustee Lopez is saying, where, okay, we corrected these now, 4 months from now, 5 months from now, if that property becomes an issue again, we'd have the capacity to be able to go back and check and right and follow up on those going forward. So it's an issue also, you know, staffing, contribution of various different departments that can assist in certain ways. And it allows us to have more expanding of people and ability to enforce them better.
Yeah, and I think it's worth sort of repeating, you know, the DPW has done a really great job. The sanitation foreman, you know, pretty much every day they go out, will send in photos to the code enforcement folks about issues of sanitation that have come up along their way. So now that the sanitation foreman or somebody from the sanitation department will be able to actually write those tickets and instead of just referring them to us, like there's a lot there. So there's a lot of things they pick up every day. It's, you know, 4, 5, 6 violations that they're picking up. And these are the kinds of things that I think when you're driving to work in the morning, you see, you know, stuff that's out that's not supposed to be out. I think the average, you know, resident is going to say, geez, that looks terrible. And so it's a big deal.
It is.
Code enforcement, we're still going to be doing sanitation tickets as well. So we'll use them, you know, as part of our enforcement. But, you know, being able to have a person who is starting out early in the morning and seeing them that can write them immediately, plus on top of what we can do when we see issues with properties, we'll just expand the enforcement on sanitation.
Awesome. Okay. I have one more question. It's something of a two-parter. So the question is about, oh, hold on. Siri, please. How we can measure our success over time. So I found that the data that you presented, 10 fire violations, et cetera, like that is helpful. And if we could get data like that over time, period, that would be great. The next level of success is if we can get that on a map somewhere to show like, even just like, like total, not like individual houses, but like areas of the village, like hotspots, and how those changed over time. That would be really helpful to tell a story, as opposed to just like, here's like a number of fire violations. It's hard to contextualize that. That would be super helpful. And then number 3, if we're really getting very, very strong with this, is to show the second order effects of this kind of thing. So as a result of the fact that we have tighter code violations that we are enforcing, here's the ramifications. We have fewer fire issues. We have fewer folks experiencing homelessness. We have whatever, right? That takes a lot more effort and data in order to get to, but that's ultimately why we're doing this. It's not just because we find code enforcement to be a fun thing to work on, but because there are all of these issues that are coming up in the village. We realize that code enforcement is one of the root ways that we can address some of these issues. And so we can ultimately figure out, boom, code enforcement is allowing us to see improvement in these numbers, and that would be great. That's like not really a question, but would love to hear anybody respond to any of those points.
So we have, we obviously do have all the data for the tickets. So it's a matter of trying to, work on geocoding some of the historical data. The sort of advanced metrics that you mentioned at the end, I think are a little more nuanced, and probably we need to sit together and think up a way to calculate that information. But the first layer of detail, I think, is definitely available. We have it by date, and we have it by stuff. It starts to get a little muddy because there's the ticket phase, and then there's the sort of the next step. So sometimes they turn into OTR, sometimes they get cleaned up, sometimes they go to court, and sometimes it goes to court and gets resolved quickly, and sometimes it goes to court and gets resolved not so quickly. And so it becomes hard to track after the ticket phase. So that's not to say that we can't work on getting it in a way that makes sense over time. So
And we can track data, like we were able to do now, but we can, I'm sure, put some of that into a mapping. And then, but it just gets a little tricky on trying to track down the length of time it takes to remedy them. But we could work on trying to map it out a little better.
yeah, Municity 5 is supposed to have heat mapping, so we'll try to see if we can find a way to use that new Municity 5 as well to put it into some heat mapping.
Thank you.
Anybody else
done.
have questions? Comments? That's, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bob.
I guess a couple of things I think are key components is root cause and some way of tracking owners or landlords that are habitual. That's 2 key things for us, or for me. We know we have usual suspects, I'm sure, but I think if we track the root cause and the owners or landlords of the buildings, I think that would be helpful information too. That's all I have. Everything else sounds good.
Thank you, Bob. Manny, you took your mute off.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I could go all night, but I promise Sue.
But you're not going all night.
No, I promise Sue that I'm going to make it short on this topic. I have a lot of questions, and I'm hoping that this topic is going to come in front of us in a work session, because there's a lot of issues that I have. One of the things that I want to make it clear, when this first came out about 6 or 7 months ago, one of the questions that I had for our manager is, this to me sounds like a code enforcement portion, and it is a code enforcement. I don't understand a little bit of, not to disrespect you, Jaime, but it has nothing to do with planning, has nothing to do with a planner. Okay. So that being said, I would like to take a little bit of sit back on this. A couple months back, I did mention to Karen as well that code enforcement should be walking. Walkability in the village is important. Education to our community is important. So as part of this task force, I had asked as well to give me some sort of update. I only had one update through the process. So I felt that when you guys were going through it. I think there was one email that went out that you guys doing a site visit, and I think Dana, I'm not sure, went to this, to one of the walkability portions of it. I'm not sure, but I wasn't able to go to that one. But anyway.
No, I don't think I was able to make it, unfortunately.
Okay. But I know it was one additional email to one email that I was able to attend to the meeting. So that's internal stuff. Obviously, I would like to be more involved in this. In any regards, one of the pictures that was shown, it was actually Yale Avenue in my recollection, and I don't want you guys to answer this, but that one actually, the violation was caused by the owner that was removing that stuff, that was fixing. I believe it's the same property that came in front of us because they needed an agreement because it was part of the right of way in the village. So it was a little more complex than just walking to that property and just saying, this is a violation. So I want to make sure we are addressing the issues. I didn't see a lot about vacant properties. I didn't see a lot about, you're talking about, you mentioned about fire inspections. There was about 10. My understanding of conversations, even going through the budget and even conversations with Joe, he already had a mapping of a lot of the businesses, and he already has a list of all the multifamily buildings that need, fire inspections already. So I'm not sure why is that as part of this topic, because we already have a list. We have unless you find new buildings that require that, then that's a different story. And then I think that should be pointed out here. There were new buildings that there are 3 families and up that needed to be as a part of the fire inspection. So to me, there's a lot of things missing. I feel that, 6 months have gone by, and to me, there's a lot of progress, but I wish, I don't see, I'm kind of going to go back a little bit to one of the slides that you, Jaime, presented. Says why a task force? The task force is created to efficiency code and sanitation enforcement. I want to kind of, if you can codify this portion, how is that, and all these works that you have done. Let me ask you this: you have the police chief in there, you have DPW there, and my understanding is so far sanitation has not been addressed with this. Okay, so literally for the past 6 months has been literally, far as I can see, is just property maintenance. That's it. Correct? I know Karen is saying no, but I want to hear.
Well, I'm going to answer this. So it actually is broader than that. So sanitation is involved because we do have an issue with sanitation and work on the street, especially with things being left out on long days and things. And
so
our
let me ask you
sanitation
this: how many sanitation tickets have been written up in this past 6 months on these works that you guys have done?
So the sanitation stickers probably weren't as written up as much on this walk because they're happening later in the day. They get written up first thing in the morning. So they would have been written up on usually by this time already. So one of the things we're working with is the sanitation foreman can now issue sanitation tickets directly so that we don't have to add another step into that because they'll see them first.
Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt. We passed the legislation years ago where the designee could be anybody, including the police department.
The union had some challenges with that, so we had to work that through the union. I'm not aware that you passed. That's in the code. It's not in the job descriptions, so we had to work that out with the unions. So the idea is going forward is not to necessarily always have the chief or the director of public works here. It's actually probably going forward, it'll be less, and it's going to be much more code enforcement now that we've enhanced our code enforcement capacity. This blossomed out of efforts that we had that did have to do with zoning when we were looking at different areas too. Some of these things, we are looking at things so that we understand pre-existing non-conforming issues better. So there's a lot of reasons why we're doing this. And what I think you have to look at is we're not going to solve all the problems in 6 months, but we've come a really long way of getting people to work together in a much more effective way. So we have a much better response from whether it's policemen who are more aware of these issues, how to deal with them, who to call, whether it's working especially closely with sanitation and code enforcement. So again, it's a process and it's something that we explored. We may evolve it differently going forward. And we certainly, if you're not invited, we will absolutely make sure that when we do the walkthroughs, we will let the board know. So if they want to join, they can. But we only, even if we, part of the problem when we look at things through very narrow silos, we are limited in what we do. When we look at things more broadly, we have a much greater impact. We have a lot of people with a lot of skills and talents. They're out there every day. And this is giving us a better, greater capacity and a greater understanding of how we work together to solve the problems of the village. Because all of these things are
Karen,
interrelated.
Believe me, I'm not taking any credit away from anybody as an individual. I think, to me, if I was to ask the chief, and probably I could ask, I said, Chief, what have you learned on these walks from what the task force is supposed to be?
Quite a bit. We found out a lot about what different people's roles are and some of what their expectations are for those roles. We found out places where there are training gaps and people needed to better understand how to enforce laws and how to interact with different people on different calls, when different people should be calling, when cops should be calling for code enforcement, when code enforcement should be calling for cops. I think that a major problem we've had in the village over the history has been siloed work, where sanitation was over there and building was over there and the police department was over here. And what this did is this created clear lines of communication so everybody understands their areas of responsibility. So quite a bit about building codes, where one of the things that we found here is that if the police department is more aware of what type of things to look for in code enforcement, then we have a better opportunity to alert the building department to these things.
All right, that's very helpful. So I appreciate that. So I'm assuming as a chief within your department, you're going to be some sort of training to the staff as well, to the police.
We reported a building that was placarded yesterday.
Okay. So my next question is, when you guys go, Joe or Jaime, I guess, whoever wants to answer this question, when you guys walk these neighborhoods and you see a problem, like, there was a window that was cracked, what kind of information do you have to give that to the homeowner or to the tenant? Is any flyers that you guys created, any information that this is the property manager, this is what you should be looking, maybe there's an opportunity like the fire department, Bob, I'm pretty sure they still do that. The fire department used to have a flyer where, change your alarms, change the smoke detectors, change the batteries on this, update this. What do you guys have provided to educate our community?
We haven't brought any of that with us on the walk because in most cases we go by the homes and see what issues there are and make record of it and contact the homeowners, and often they're not there. In some cases where we, where a tenant or somebody was there, they would come out and approach us to tell us, oh, while you're here, we had a complaint about something. And they brought it to our attention because they see us as a group out there and say, oh, this is an opportunity for us to, tell them, my neighbor in the rear yard has, a bunch of chickens, and, they wouldn't know that because they told us that and then realized, okay, yeah, they're not supposed to have them there. And we were able to make a record of it.
Great. So
we haven't been going through the buildings, per se to say, let's hand out documents to them. It's just
that's part of the process. So that to me, that should have been in a presentation where it says, look, going forward the next 6 months, we're going to be producing something to hang out to our community so they can learn, or they can be aware that a cracked window is not acceptable, that hanging gutter is not acceptable, that dumping water into the streets is not acceptable. So I don't see that as part of the presentation. So I'm a little concerned that, what is the next 6 months are going to be. The other portion of this is, Joe, help me out in this, and probably I'm sure either Joe or Jaime or even Karen, we have a software that I'm hoping to see soon in the building department in regards to process of applications and all the other stuff. We're spending a lot of money on this software. So one of the things of my recollection was that we can keep track of properties. How do we keep track of properties? That was something that Omar brought it up. It's like a little bit of that, how do we see repeat offenders, like, Bob was talking about. So is the software that we are hopefully going to get soon, hopefully before the summer, because it's been over a year now. Will that software be able to help you, Joe, or even to the sanitation portion of the work that we are trying to accomplish this?
Yeah, so the software we have on Municity 5, they just started going live with it about maybe almost 2 months now. It started in January. But the first 6 months is basically hammering out any issues or glitches they have with it. So we're still working, and we're using it, but we're working where we, as you work with it every day, you realize, something needs to be corrected, and we meet with them every Thursday morning to go over a list of some things we're trying
Joe,
to.
let me stop you for 1 second. Let me ask you, I'm gonna ask 2 questions on this topic. Will this software be able to help you track things like this?
Once they have all the reports and stuff that we can do to track it, yeah, we haven't gotten to that point.
Okay, so now my second question is, when is this software gonna be 100% online?
They had told us, I asked that question in January, they said it will be available for the public sometime early, beginning of 2023.
2023.
Yeah.
Mayor, I don't have any more questions, but I would like to continue this conversation probably offline or in a work session.
Okay, so here's my thing about these meetings. When the staff puts together a presentation, some of these things get really into detail. Other people don't need to have all the detail. Manny, you've got the presentation. My suggestion is that you go page by page on this and ask your questions in writing. Just take the pages and say, I'd like to know more about this. I want to hear more about that. Because this was supposed to be done on work session, which do give, I think, better opportunity to get into the details. You sound, I think, Manny, unhappy with some of the pieces of the presentation. I'm sure you're happy with others. All fair game. I mean, these are not rubber stamping environments. We're supposed to be asking questions. It's fair on one hand. On the other hand, there's also the ability for staff in a public meeting to sort of have a moment to think and say, well, look, this is something we're working on. This didn't work out. My suggestion is go through the presentation, put every page by page, put it in writing, send it to Joe and say, look, I'd like answers on this. I'd like more information on that. And that can all be done in writing too. Not that we're not being transparent. It just allows us for the next meeting to maybe ask for different metrics. Omar discussed certain metrics. You might want different metrics. If it becomes more time to do a presentation than to do code enforcement, that too is not a good idea. Everything has a balance. I took some notes down. Let me just sort of go through some of the things that I think will resolve. Different comments, etc., and just sort of put it out there. I don't actually need a response to any of this. I simply want to do some observations. First of all, I thought the presentation was good. In fairness to the staff, I had asked the village manager when she told me about the code enforcement that I don't want it more than 10 minutes because I want time for questions, but I also, it's a legislative session and we need to have the agenda follow through. So I think they chose the things that made the most sense for them. I think that this code enforcement is really important. I cannot remember in the 28 years that I've lived here that there hasn't been a politician running for office who didn't say code enforcement was really important. Mostly on just without a lot of metrics, there's one key metric to all this, and many came from folks in the fire department, because the first person I ran against actually was in the fire department way back, is the safety issues. When you see pools that aren't supposed to be there, it's with like a cord that I wouldn't even use at home, by the way, anymore. It's a safety issue. That thing blows up or goes on fire. It's not just the house that goes down, it's all the neighbors in the same neighbor. I mean, this is like serious stuff, right? So garbage in the wrong place, windows that are cracked. So windows that are cracked aren't only ugly, they're dangerous, because as soon as the wind picks up, windows shatter and they fly all over the place. So it's about, code enforcement has a lot to do with safety. If you gave metrics, Joe, just on safety and how we improve safety without going into some of the deeper stuff, I think that would be like helpful to explain some of that stuff. So one of the things I'd like to do is have the code enforcement task force, which I think includes all the right people. And if available, board members will be invited if they're available. they can go as well. But I don't want them being held up because a board member can't attend. I mean, there's got to be a balance. I'd like this presentations done every 3 months. That's 4 times a year, so that we have some continuity and we add things and we take things away. I would like the education piece mentioned by 3 people to be thought through, Joe, because I think it's important to use these moments and say, look, illegal pools aren't just something we don't like. They're unsafe because nobody's managing how they're being put in, who's using them, not really who's using them, how they're being used, and all the other rules and regulations that go with pools. And there are many. Okay, so there are these topics that can be covered as education on our website and say, hey, you know, unless you go through this process, you are not allowed above ground, in ground, all the other stuff that goes with it. So the education piece, I'm not going to ask you how to do it or tell you how to do it. I just expect this task force education, and how the chief of police just said he himself learned a lot of stuff. So whatever he learned can be shared with others. I'm not saying every detail, but some key items, you know. I love what Bob had said, and it's been said before, but with his exclamation point, the habitual perpetuators of the same thing. I totally love the idea that a landlord said to you, Joe, I didn't know they were doing it, and immediately had it taken down. Nice. That is, to me, a huge success. If it happens again, I no longer will believe that the landlord doesn't know, because, you know, they too have a responsibility to know what's going on their property. That so education point might be to send a letter to all landlords and say, you're actually supposed to know what goes on in your property. You know, you're speeding when you're speeding, not only when the cop catches you, you know, so it's not when you get caught that what you're doing is illegal. It's actually illegal when you're doing it. So, but assume people are innocent, assume they don't know. And I think that's super effective. I had a question about the premise of the task force. There are 2 things that I'm not clear about now, having seen a presentation 6 months later. Number 1, why mixed use buildings are not in there. If this is about residential, and the greatest growth of our not the greatest, that's the wrong statement. So much of the visible areas of our village, the downtown development council and others have sent us pictures for 4 years running, is almost always about Route 133 from the top to the bottom and all the way around. Secor, waterfront, there are certain, especially Route 133, especially in the Upper Crescent, and many of those are mixed use buildings, which make them more complicated, you know, with businesses on the bottom, residences on top. I'd like consideration that be added into your fundamental core sort of piece of this task force. However you want to do it is fine with me. But I think it has to be in there. Again, I'm just reading off my my list. I already mentioned Bob's idea that we start databasing the landlords or in the continue, because many of them own more than one property under the same name or different names. I'd also like to know if you have plans, and this is actually a question. The rest were sort of just things I'd like you to think about as you look at the Prezi now that we've had a chance to look at it, is the use of the drones, of the drone the police department has. It seems to me that so much of what goes around that you see when you walk, which is, I think, fantastic that you guys are walking. Eventually, when Maddie wins a big grant for us, it might also include e-bikes to the department so they can get around faster to more properties. But I would like to see how a drone could be used for code enforcement purposes. I don't need an answer now. I'd like it thought out, and I'd like it presented for me in 3 months from now. If the answer is it can't, don't wait 3 months. You could email me on the it can't be done route. If it can be done, things like pools, illegal fencing, illegal housing in the back, illegal businesses and backyards, you know, to expect our residents to report on their neighbors it's tough. It's personally tough to have people do that. Some people do, but it's a little rough. People, all of a sudden, a fence goes up so people could do all sorts of stuff in their backyard. So I'd like to have an understanding. The drones are part of our police department. I know it's not human, but I'd like to have a sense of how that might be used, which it is being used, I believe, where it's legal in other communities. And I believe in Ossining, it actually is legal we have not passed legislation that it cannot be used. And so I expect that to sort of be added as your additional like group of helpers in that list of who's involved. Put the drone in there because he or she or whatever they are, they can help us also in a very unobtrusive way to do what we need to. So those are sort of to report on this more often. So it's every 3 months, not 6 months. And all the other things I said, I think covers a lot of what I'd like to see now that I see the presentation. I like it to also really be used. My only question started until I heard Manny's and other people's was, how are you choosing the places that you're walking? Was there a system, a process, a thought? Is it that those are the areas that get complaints? Is it that it's mostly housing versus commercial? Was there I'm sure there was. Could you share with me maybe, Joe, how you guys decide? I mean, I think you could have thrown a dart against the map and gone anywhere and it would have been fine with me, but is there a system here?
Not to be, targeting or anything. We figured some of the streets that we know we've had consistent complaints and problems that over the past number of years. So we figured we'd address some of the areas where we know we get most of our complaints from to see if we can be proactive on walking them and seeing if we can.
Okay, so your very straightforward answer is we have data points for the past few years of the most concentrated areas of complaints that are walkable for us that we knew we could address, and that's why we chose that area. Does that encapsulate what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so it's based on data. Okay, that's good. That's the way it should be. And then you'll go to the next and the next. You're not announcing it in a public meeting where you're going next. I wouldn't expect you to. You don't even know if you know where you're going next. So I appreciate it. I thought it was a good presentation. I think there's a little bit of frustration because code enforcement has not been where I think it should be and other people think it should be. On one hand, on the other hand, the team building that will allow this to be more forceful. I think everyone in this gallery has heard me say, if you haven't, you'll hear it again tonight. If you haven't, you will hear it for the first time tonight. If you have, you will hear it again, that teams always produce greater results than any single individual. And if you have silos, it's a bunch of individuals. If you have a team that now can't say it's his job, it's her job, it's my job, but rather like work together and move together, I think we're going to see more proactive activity. The technology piece and all that, Joe, I think Manny will probably address that in an email and ask for more questions about that. And it's something that I think has been bothersome. I'm sure to you as well as to some of us who've sat in the chairs a little bit longer than others, but I think that could be addressed through an email and we need to follow up on that. Dana, I realized once I started talking that I didn't give you a chance to speak, so I don't know if you have anything to add. I'm sorry.
I will only say that this is a complicated issue and I appreciate that we're trying to take a fresh approach to it. You have to start somewhere. Or we're not starting, but I think that it's a commendable effort. And I think to have, these guys walking around on the streets, looking at, interacting with people, talking, this is only good. I mean, people see, oh, look, they do care. They're, you talk about various issues. I mean, the word slum, I know we had the word slum housing in there, targeted areas. I don't know. I'm wondering if some of the languages could be, I don't know. Targeted areas just sounds aggressive, but I think it's a very I think it's a good start, and I think it's a good approach, and there are lots of root causes to why buildings aren't maintained or aren't up to the level we would like, and those are social issues, and they're very, very difficult to correct. So I just want us to keep that in mind, And, you know, the swimming pool kind of blew my mind with that extension cord. I mean, stuff like that is just, no. Not good. But I applaud this approach, and I think we heard from Chief Sylvester that in the sharing of knowledge, that is progress. Thanks.
Good. Well, thank you. You know, I like to go last to wrap things up, and
If I could.
given my, so I appreciate that. Okay.
Trustee Fritchie has another comment.
Oh, Bob.
If-
Thought I heard noise. I just didn't see it was coming from you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk over you. Just a thought popped into my mind when Joe said that a tenant walked out to them. The chief is very identifiable. Got his uniform on and this, that, and the other thing. Is there any plans? So I can only presume that the group that walked in their clothes they came to work with that day. I believe if they're more identifiable, whether it's a windbreaker or something that shows it or says it on the back, like U.S. Marshals, all right, tenants talk. They all talk. And if the tenant that Joe spoke to, whoever spoke to, to say, yeah, this is that, they're gonna say, hey, you know, I saw those people, they're walking around, they got their code enforcement or task force jackets on. I think that speaks volumes and gets our message out a lot better. I don't know if that's a thought. I think it would be beneficial.
Yeah,
What, Manny?
before anybody else answers, Bob, let me piggyback on that one. That I have requested that for years, for code enforcement, and there's an allowances on uniforms as well. That's something that I have been asking to be implemented. I know in the winter they do have jackets that says code enforcement. You know, the vehicles are different colors and they have the seal and it says code enforcement on it. But I think you're right, and I hope, you know, now that as somebody else says it, you know, it kind of resonates within the staff that that's the stuff that you should be, you know, wearing. Something, because I know they do have a badge, they do have an ID, but sometimes that's not enough. They should be able, community members should be able to know that is the building inspector, that is a code enforcement officer. You know, I think that's part of the education process.
So I think let me say to the staff that's listening, and when you go back from this meeting, if you wanted to know whether there would be a majority vote of yes on the fact that staff should be identified through either hats or identifiers like everybody else, the answer is going to be yes. In the next 3 months, Joe, there better be an explanation of why Paul and who else, you, Joe, and I don't know who else is going out there. I'm looking at the gallery, whoever's out there, you know, they need to be identified as whatever their role is in a visible way, because I think the people that just watch them walk by will sit there and go, well, these guys are out here. The idea that like people know who our village engineer is and who are you know, lawyers or whatever it is. I know not everyone likes to wear identifiers, but I'm gonna like tell you that there's gonna be a majority vote on this board. And God, I do not want to spend our time making this into like a legal issue of like passing legislation and what people wear. So do me a favor, Joe, in the next presentation, give us an update. If there is a reason why people aren't going to wear something that identifies them through anything that can be seen at more than like 8 feet away. So a little name tag that nobody will see from a distance is not what Bob Fritchie or Manny Casado are talking about. It's been asked before by a number of board members for years now. I think this is sort of the time to, unless somebody justifies why they won't wear one when they're out in public, we're expecting that it be added to what does get done. I don't know if you'll have a unanimous vote, but I'm going to bet that you're going to have a majority vote on this. So I think it's just needs to be added based on what I'm hearing.
But just one more thing, it appears that all of these observations are street observations, correct, Joe? Unless you're invited in or the owner invites you in, you cannot go into the property, correct?
We can't go into 1 and 2 families without consent.
Okay,
Anything that's 3 family and up, we have to send a notice that we're going to be doing fire inspection on it, because then you have to notify the tenants in there that way to have their apartments available for us to get into.
right, yeah, I understand that. So the drone thing is a home run.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it's a home run. It makes sense.
Well,
That's all I got. I'm not gonna take
Again,
any more
it
time.
becomes, it's more complex than that. But I'm not gonna get into that, but.
You don't
yeah,
have
it's more
to.
complex
All
than
we're
that.
doing is saying, Joe, this is a really good presentation. And when I say Joe, I mean the whole team. I mean, I just can't go through the entire team every time I say that. We'd like some of these items added. If they can't be done, please tell us why they can't be done. That's all. You know, that's all. Or it can be done, but in a year, or it could be sort of done, but in this way. That's all we're saying.
Well,
You don't have to respond to everything in this
Oh,
meeting.
no,
You just
I
have to
understand.
take
I
the
mean,
notes and come back to us somehow. That's all.
yeah, the uniform things, we did buy clothing for staff, but what we did last year was obviously all for more, it was summer stuff. We can purchase other items for them, like coats and stuff like that, if that's the, if that's better for them to be identified, that's not an issue. The issue with bringing up the thing with drones, Stuart and I have had conversation about that in the past, and there are some aspects that I can't speak for. Stuart know better than I about, how legal it is for us to observe certain type of violations using a drone. So that's something I guess we have to do a little bit more research on to see how legally that would work if we obtain information or violations using a drone, how it works when we prosecute. But I don't know all the details to it, but we have discussed that previously. And I
Right,
guess
that's a prosecution question, which we want addressed. The other one is a human question. According to your own presentation, you told a landlord that there is a dangerous pool. The landlord said, I'm removing it, and then removed it. So according to you, there are a number of people who, when told that there is a pool, that there is 14 volleyball courts in their backyard, when there is like, who knows what else, sit there and say, I'll remove it. So there is the prosecution. I'd like more information about the drones, but there's also simply information to be shared that some people will say, what? I had no idea. Let me get rid of that problem. That's not good for me. I don't want. It's not just about violations. It's also, they may not want those things. They may not know it exists. So even according to this presentation, I forgot what percentage you had said. I think half or more than half actually reacted positively by simply having it addressed. So I'm all for that as step one. And that I don't think is a prosecution issue about
No,
drugs.
I agree. I mean, it's
So
like.
that's all.
Yeah, we issue, in order to remedy is basically a notice that this is a violation, and some people respond to it because they just want to be good citizens and want to maintain their properties, and they weren't aware of it, and we work with them just to get them to rectify the issue. As you know, there are some that don't, and the prosecution that goes further. But I always look at it, if there's 100 complaints or issues, and just by bringing it to the attention of the owner, whether it's through a notice that this is a violation, 50, 60, 70% of the time they rectify the situation, then it's 60% of the things, that 60 out of 100 that were done without the need of enforcement by going, taking it to a court appearance ticket or so forth. It's just been rectified.
Joe, any job where you could do a 50% improvement is a home run.
Yeah, I agree. It's 50% better than it was before.
And almost any job, even the weathermen, if you can get more than 50% accurate, they'd be doing a better job than they normally do. Like if they get 51% accurate, it's better than tossing coin. That's actually a big hit. Anyway, I think that we've covered many of the bases. The next step is just to incorporate some of the requests, and what cannot be done, you'll let us know, and what can be done, you'll think about it and see how it can be done. Please keep in mind that I think this is 100% in the right direction. Obviously, we all wish it would have been done, that we'd be farther along, but so what? We are like in a very good place, because I'm hearing that you're all like sort of working together. You're walking the streets. As the weather gets nicer, I'm sure you'll be able to do more of that. And I'm sure you're learning a lot about the community that's going to help us not only with code enforcement, but other issues. And I think the public would appreciate seeing you guys out there. These are all good things. This is like all very like positive aspects of what we're hearing here tonight. So I think we're ready to move on. You're still on, I think, Village Manager. I don't know if that's the
I am
only
still
thing that
on.
you wanted
So,
to discuss.
I just want to wrap up here. There was enormous amount of effort that went into this that was above and beyond everybody's day jobs. So I just want to commend everybody for participating. It's not something that we have typically done. We're starting to do it on more and more things, and the benefit is reaped by all of us because we are working with a team, and working with a team, as the mayor said, you do get more things done than when you're working on your own. It is really a testament to the code enforcement department, to the collective efforts of everybody involved, the police department, the planner, the DPW department, that we've now gone farther than we've been able to go in the past on certain issues. So to answer your question before, Trustee Quesada, the fire inspections were buildings that we would not have had otherwise. So these are really good things that are happening. And I do just really want to recognize the fact that the staff really rallied and went above and beyond. And we got full cooperation from the police department on this. And it's a lot of work, but it's important work. And we're all very committed to making sure that the village that everybody works in is the best village it can possibly be. So with that, I really want to just put on record that the staff worked incredibly hard on this, and Jaime's presentation skills helped us all to be able to tell the story. So thank you, staff.
Okay, do you have other items?
I do not
for your
today.
section? Okay.
No.
Sue?
Corporation Counsel Kahan.
Thank you, Clerk Donnelly. Two brief things, folks. One, the governor this evening signed Executive Order 11.4. So the board will have the option of continuing with remote meetings through the 15th of April. And that was, as I said, signed just a couple of hours ago. Secondly, there is a planning board meeting this Tuesday night, March the 24th at 7 p.m. It will be via Zoom. It is a busy meeting with many different applications on there. So if you are interested in what is going on with the planning board, you can see the agenda, see the items that are annexed to the various items on the agenda, and feel free to participate and observe. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Sue?
Chief Sylvester.
Good evening. So the main focus for the police department right now has been traffic, as we've mentioned in a couple of past meetings. High volume of traffic accidents, mainly related to increased volume with people coming out as the restrictions start to get lifted, and a lot of aggressive driving, as we're seeing not only across the community, but across Westchester, and what I'm hearing from fellow chiefs across the state. We saw an increase in accidents January and February compared to the past 5 years. March, we managed to get it flat. We did that through strategic enforcement, as I've talked about in a couple of past meetings, with targeted details on 9A and some of our busier traveled roads. So a continued effort to try and manage traffic and get people to drive safely. Beyond the tickets, it really requires voluntary compliance for most of our drivers. So we'll continue to encourage people to do that, both through positive and negative consequences. To that end, we've done a lot of training this week with traffic stuff. Sergeant Majorana just came back from the Lifesavers course in Chicago, which focused on topics like marijuana and driving, child safety seats, and pedestrian safety. In a couple of weeks, Sergeant Castanos will be going to the Empire State Law Enforcement Traffic Safety Conference, where I've also been asked to present. So the two of us will be up there. This week in schools, today we had another Cops and Kids program at Park School, where Officer Hershowitz and Officer Tompkins, and I believe they had a couple of others with them, read to 5 different classes in Park School today. Their next 2 school events are scheduled for April 12th and April 16th at AMD and at Ossining High School. Additionally, Sergeant Lance brought to us today that he and a couple of members of our SWAT team will be participating in the Ossining High School First Responder Program, which is aimed at introducing kids to different first responder agencies in the community to build bridges with some of our high school students. That's all for tonight. Thanks.
Great.
I have a a question. Sorry, Sue.
No.
Chief, are we seeing any differences now that COVID is sort of subsiding and I'm hearing more people are being asked to go back into the city and other cities, not just Manhattan? Are we seeing any traffic patterns changing, more traffic? Anything different than it's been
Sure,
in the
yeah.
past year or so?
Yeah, we've seen a higher volume of traffic, which is why we have believed to find the increased number of accidents. Our number of accidents aren't substantially higher than the past 7-year average. Over the 7-year average, we were up 5% on the first 75 days of the year. So it's not drastically higher, but we had a number of accidents concentrated on 9A, particularly near 134. We've got a meeting coming up with the town to discuss some of those issues. Much of our issue with traffic is perception as opposed to realistic statistical increases.
Okay, I just noticed that the mayor in Barcliff is writing about Route 9A and the traffic and increase in accidents. I didn't see a lot of data, but I know that that's something that he's concerned about. I personally have just seen more 9A, more on the Taconic. I go to work a couple different routes. So I've actually taken note of that, and we've got a densely populated village. So I just want to make sure people are safe. So anything we can do and that the board needs to help with to either educate the public, support some program, whatever, budget for whatever, like, please let us know, because I'm really concerned after 2 years of people sort of building a pattern, the pattern has to change. Because there are more people out and the weather is getting warmer, there'll be more people hanging out and eating and drinking and, enjoying life, which we like, but then they get into cars and, we're trying to sort of figure out how to prevent this. I appreciate it, but again, any support needed from the board, you got to let us know, that's all. Whatever that may look like. Good luck at the speaking engagement. And Sue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Organizational announcements. Announcement shall be event-related only and shall not exceed 2 minutes in length. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to make a organizational announcement?
I don't see anyone with their hands up.
Okay. Then we'll move on. Public comments on agenda items. Visitors are accorded a 4-minute opportunity to discuss the board and any of the resolutions on the agenda. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to do that?
Not seeing
Again,
anybody.
I don't see anyone. No.
Okay, moving on then. Village Board resolutions. Approval of minutes. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austin hereby approve the minutes of the March 2nd, 2022 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a
We need a second.
Second,
Any comments?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of voucher detail report. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austin hereby approves the voucher detail report dated March 16th, 2022 in the amount of $609,791.40. Do I have a motion?
So move.
second,
Any comments? Not seeing any. Sue?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The number C is going to be a roll call vote. It's the adoption of the proposed law number 2, 2022 as local law, it's local law 1 of 2022. The law amending the sidewalk, cafe, dining, outside dining in the Village of Austin code. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austin have been considering the adoption of the proposed law, local law 2, 2022, entitled Local Law Amending Chapter 2016, Sidewalk Cafes, Outside Dining and Sidewalk Sales, the Village of Austin in the Village of Austin Code, and whereas the proposed local law would change the effective date for a permit to operate outdoor dining location as approved for open space from the current May 1st through October 31st to April 1st through October 31st. And whereas a public hearing was conducted on March 2nd at 7:30 via Zoom platform pursuant with Chapter 417 of the laws of 2021 and the Executive Order 11.1, affording the public the opportunity to comment on a proposed local law. And whereas the public hearing was closed on March 2nd, 2022, and whereas there was no impediments of approving proposed law, local law 2-2022 as local law 1-2022, it is therefore resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austin hereby adopts the proposed local law 2-2022 as local law 1-2022 and directs that said local law will be filed and distributed in accordance with the applicable law. Do I have a motion?
Second,
Who was the second? I apologize.
second, me too.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Casada.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Trustee White,
Aye.
Trustee Fritchie,
Aye.
and Trustee Lopez,
Aye.
and Mayor Levin.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you. D, resolution authorizing the superintendent of Parks and Recreation, the Recreation and Parks Department to accept a donation of a ping pong table.
Yeah.
Resolved that the superintendent of the Village of Austin Recreation and Parks Department is authorized to accept from Johnny Slolovic of Millwood.
Sultanic.
I'm bad. I'm apologizing in advance for how I pronounce it. Of Millwood, New York, a donation of a ping pong table for the use of the Recreation Center, and be it further resolved that the Village of Austin Board of Trustees greatly acknowledges the donation to the Recreation and Parks Department. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Any comments? I'm just going to thank the person. We have to do these resolutions when we accept gifts from the
That's right.
public on behalf of the taxpayers. So that's why we do it in this very formal way. Any comments?
Is
In
there
addition
any-
to that?
Do we send any type of note to this person, or we just do it on the here like this?
Do we send a thank you note? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if we
Karen,
said
does
that.
anybody send them a thank you note?
We do.
Okay, there you go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. That was the DPW. The DPW award bid replacement of the water mains, on Westerly Road. Resolved that subject to the review of Corporation Counsel, the Board of Trustees hereby awards the bid for contract number DPW-21-01, replacement of water main breaks to MTS Infrastructure LLC, 135 Lafayette Avenue, White Plains, New York, 10603, for the bid amount of $795,025 as the lowest bid received from a responsive and responsible bidder. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
second,
Anybody have any comments? No, Sue?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? DPW award of bid, installation of portable generator connection cabinets for Hollow Hose and Village Halls. We've resolved that subject to the review of Corporation Counsel, the Board of Trustees hereby awards the bids for contract number BOO-21-02, installation of portable generator cabinets of Hollow Hose Company and Village Hall to JT Orzendo General Contracting and Development, Inc., 443 North Meck Christian Parkway, Mount Vernon, New York, for a bid of $83,500 as the lowest bid received from a responsive and responsible bidder. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
second,
Any comments?
These are for portable generator cabinets.
Yes, it's the generator that now is in the village. And it's a portable generator, and they can plug it into the building when needed.
So it's not a cabinet, a generator will go, these are actual
No, it's a plug,
generators.
it's like a big plug on the side of the building,
Oh, Okay,
but it involves a lot more than just a plug on the side of the building,
Oh, so the official name is a cabinet for that.
I guess.
Oh, okay. No,
I'm sure
because,
it's waterproof, you know.
no, I mean, we don't know. So I think it's a
Well,
fair question.
All those,
Okay.
oh, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there we go. Appointment of Nicole Varusco to the Board of Ethics. Resolved that the Board of Trustees appoints Nicole Varusco to the Village Board of Ethics for a 3-year term expiring March 15th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Or
I'm sorry, are you on the appointment of Nicole? For I
I'm
lost
sorry,
my
which
spot.
Yes,
Well, is that what you said? I'm sorry, I
Yes,
lost
I'm
my
sorry.
spot for a
G.
second.
G, Mayor.
Okay, G, the appointment of
Yeah.
Nicole Varusco
Yeah, yeah.
to the Board of Ethics. Okay,
So
and
who is
we
the
got-
second?
I was.
okay, great.
I know Bob did say.
Any comments? I'll just make one. I interviewed Nicole. I've sent the resume around. We actually need more members of Board of Ethics. She's a local person. She is a lawyer. This is one. She's sort of new to volunteer work, if you will, in the village. I am very much looking forward to having us join. There is no official liaison to the Board of Ethics, so I'm just presenting her to the board. And we're still looking for a couple of people. They can be non-lawyers in this case. And I think it'll be like a new person being involved would be sort of, I don't want to say fresh thinking because it's a Board of Ethics, you don't need fresh thinking, but it'll be somebody who's getting is a new person to the people that we will be counting us to help advise us. So I obviously highly recommend her because that's why I submitted the name. So just want to let you folks know a little bit about her.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Authorize the village manager to sign a master contract for grants with the state of New York for contract T1002106 Austin Firehouse Consolidation Plan.
so moved.
But not done yet. Resolved that upon review of the Corporation Council, the village manager authorizes to sign the master contract for grants with the state of New York, contract T1002106 Austin Firehouse Comprehensive Plan.
Austin Fire Consolidation Plan.
Resolution for the Board Corporation Council. Oh, I see, it's another one. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion? I wrote on it.
My motion stands, so. moved.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Second.
Second. Okay, there you go. Thank you, Omar. Any comments? I think we've discussed this, but does anybody have any additives here? Okay, Sue.
All in favor?
Aye.
You opposed? Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austin authorizing submission of the application to the local government efficiency grant for consolidation of Austin's firehouse, revision of 7/21/21. Whereas the Village of Austin, in partnership with the town of Austin, support of the Austin Fire Department, desires to study for the potential consolidation of the firehouse facilities for the purpose of improvement in safety and efficiency. And whereas the local government efficiency program under the New York State Department of State has been identified as appropriate to fund such project, and whereas up to $12,500 is available per municipality partner with a 50% required match, and whereas cost estimates to retain a qualified consultant for the work has been obtained for the amount of $37,500. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village manager to file an application with the local government efficiency grant through the New York State Department of State in the amount not to exceed $18,750, and beyond funding of such amount, the village commits to contribute $12,500 and the town commits to contributing $6,250 as the local funding match. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments? Oop, Sue?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Authorizing issue request for proposal for consolidating of Austin firehouses. Resolved that upon completion of review of the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to issue a request for proposals for consolidation of firehouses in the village of Austin. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Authorization of the village manager to issue a request for proposals for a developer of village-owned property, 200 Main Street. Resolved that upon review by Corporation Counsel, the village manager is authorized to issue a request for proposals for a developer of village-owned property at 200 Main Street. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'm gonna ask for comments. Karen and Stuart, I thought that at one point there was a request, not an RFP, but an RFQ was suggested, and maybe I blinked and I missed it and it went in a
No, an
different one?
RFP, because proposal is very specific for this building. So it's an RFP for this particular property. What we talked about was an RFQ for the Market Squares, the development.
So that was the other piece. Okay, so I'm
Broader
getting,
conceptual ideas, but this is
okay.
a pretty, within the parameters that we set forward, which were broad, but it's really basically a fit up of the space for private sector.
And it's the one that we had read. That was
Yes, and
sent
we
out.
had you had made some comments. I think a few of you had said that you're fine with it. You had made some comments. We made those changes.
Right.
I sent.
Yeah, it
I
was
sent
a
back
pretty
the review.
long RFP, so I just thought that, okay. So, and the public should know that there has been 40 years worth of, movement. This is one of those, you should look a gift horse in the mouth before accepting it. And I'm happy to say, however, that after years of 2 steps backward and 1 step forward, we're now doing 2 steps forward in a better way, meaning I'm actually super optimistic that staff is doing amazing work of the cleaning up of this place, making it sellable, that we will get it. The goal here is to get this back on the tax rolls. That is the stated goal. It has always been the stated goal, that the ability to keep giving things away, even with good intentions, is not the intention of this particular project. I do want to make that clear and put that on the record. And we're optimistic that in the marketplace that we have now, and so much of the other work that we're doing, and the DRI, which I will bring up because I didn't bring it up in the announcements, but I will do it at the end. A lot of this, firehouses too, a lot of this stuff work well together. One thing will lead to the betterment of the next, and so on and so forth. So I'm happy that we're doing this, and a lot of work has gone into this. And it's a tricky property. It's sitting on top of the hill. It's a highly visible. There isn't really any parking right there. That doesn't mean we can't get creative and find parking elsewhere. It's tricky, but it's an absolutely, I know Dana is trying to say something, but it's a beautiful building in the center of our village that people view. I mean, it's got to be thousands. I don't even know how much that road sees, that intersection. There's thousands of people see that building every day. And it's actually just beautiful. So I'm hoping that we get like a really good developer here, a really good landlord, a really good purchaser that does some really great stuff with this property. So I'm totally in support of it, but I do want the public and on the record to know that staff has just done a tremendous amount of work, and the elected officials have followed up with their own work on it as well to make sure that we move forward. So very much appreciated. I think, Sue, we're ready for a vote.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if Trustee White wanted to say something. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Authorizing the village manager to sign an agreement with A1 Computer System to provide IT managed services for the village of Austin. Whereas in January 2022, the Village of Austin issued a request for proposals for IT managed services in the 5 village-owned locations: the police station, the courthouse, Village Hall, and the Joseph G. Caputo Community Center, and the John Paul Rodriguez Operations Center, and 1 town-owned building, the Town Highway Department. And whereas the village received responses for the RFP and reviewed those who responded to it, be it resolved that upon review by Corporation Counsel, the village manager is authorized to sign the agreement with A1 Computers, 16 Mount Ebo Road South, Brewster, New York, 10509, to provide IT managed services through December 31st, 2022. And be it further resolved, the Village of Austin and IT computer system agree that the services will be provided by the services detailed in Attachment C, Option 2, bulk of discounted hours with monitoring and management of all devices, $10,833 per month. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Need a second.
Got a second?
Second.
Comments? I just have to say, it's about time. We really need to work on our IT solutions. I'm sure Sue Donnelly, if I gave her an hour, she would fill that up with reasons. But the kudos, staff, everybody involved, it's just, you know, listen, without IT in this day and age, you got nothing. All this work, you know, means nothing. So the boards discussed this. This is a solution. We're going to look at it through the end of this year. That's why it's a short term, get some footing, get some experience, see if we want to move forward with them. If we want to interview others, the staff will and village manager will make those recommendations. But for now, for the end of this year, we're going with the folks that have also been doing work with our police department for a number of years, by the way. So there's some experience with them. So there you go. Sue, I think we can do the vote.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I thank you. Authorizing the village manager to sign a proposal with PKF O'Connor Davies to provide cybersecurity and IT advisory service for the village of Austin. Resolved that upon review of the Corporation Council, the village manager authorizing to sign a proposal of PKF O'Connor Davies LLP, 245 Park Avenue, New York, 10167, to provide cybersecurity and IT advisory service for the village of Austin in accordance to the March 4th, 2022 proposal, and be it further resolved that the term of this agreement shall be upon the acceptance through December 31st, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Comments? No. Sue?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Fire Department appointment, Cataract Company number 2. Resolved upon recommendation of the fire chief, the following people have been elected as active members of Cataract Hose number 2 as interior firefighting. Kevin, now I'm going to butcher people's names, Gergania and Philip Giganti. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments? Sue?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Is there any continuing business of the board?
1 second. Karen, do you want me to proceed with the Big Belly Solar motion at this point?
Sure.
Sue, you don't have it. I'll read it.
Thank you.
It's okay?
I'm going. Oh my God.
No, don't worry about it.
Oh, we're all
Okay.
sitting here going, what? Okay.
Well, this was discussed with the board last week.
Right.
The resolution was not prepared until today because Maddie and I were waiting for certain information from the vendor. But the resolution is now prepared, so let me read it to the board. Determination that the proposed purchase of solar-powered recycling and trash compactors from Big Belly Solar LLC is consistent with General Municipal Law Section 103, subsection 16, and Village Code Section 42-5, and upon review by the Corporation Council, authorizing the village manager to sign an agreement with Big Belly Solar LLC. Whereas pursuant to Village Code Section 42-5, the village is authorized to make purchases of apparatus, materials, equipment, or supplies, or to contract for such services related to the installation, maintenance, or repair of apparatus, materials, equipment, or supplies through the use of a contract let by the United States of America or any agency thereof, or any state or other political subdivision or district therein. And whereas the process known as piggybacking requires that the following conditions be met. A, the contract must have been let by the United States or any agency thereof any state or other political subdivision or district therein. B, the contract must have been made available for use by other governmental entities, and this must clearly be stated in the contract let by the other entity that extends the terms and conditions of the contract to other governmental entities. And C, the contract must have been let to the lowest responsible bidder or on the basis of best value in a matter consistent with Village Code Chapter 42 in the General Municipal Law. And whereas the village has been investigating alternative ways to keep village streets, particularly in the downtown area, free from litter, garbage, and debris. And whereas among the alternatives evaluated by village staff were high capacity and standard capacity solar power recycling and trash compactors manufactured by Big Belly Solar LLC. And whereas Big Belly Solar LLC is a party to a contract with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, contract FAC 113 designated DEP, recycling containers, compost bins, and rain barrels, specifically category 5 of said contract, public space recycling containers, outdoor, indoor fixed position. And whereas among the items offered by Big Belly Solar LLC through contract FAC 113 designated DEP is the high capacity HC, standard capacity SC double station with life cycle clean management software 8 years. And whereas the contract user's guide for contract FAC 113 designated DEP prepared by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Operational Services Division, last updated December 14, 2021, notes that eligible entities for the contract include cities, towns, district, counties, and other political subdivisions. And whereas the prices noted in the FAC 113 master price sheet were in response to Big Belly Solar's LLC's response to a request for information from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which appears to be consistent with the provisions of General Municipal Law, Section 103. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approves using the contract between Commonwealth of Massachusetts and Big Belly Solar LLC to purchase the HC5 SC 5.5 double station solar powered recycling and trash compactors with life cycle clean management software 8 years to purchase such equipment for the Village of Ossining pursuant to Village Code Section 42-5. And be it further resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign an agreement with Big Belly Solar LLC, 150 A Street, Suite 103, Needham, Massachusetts, 02494, as outlined in the price quotation dated February 11, 2022, and the accompanying terms and conditions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments? So I didn't actually know this was coming up, but I'm grateful that it is. There was a lot of discussion and a presentation last week for anybody in the public that hears this one. Tonight's session, we don't need to repeat everything that was stated a week ago. It was a really excellent presentation by the staff. It involves more garbage cans that are highly efficient and have the solar capacity and capability, which I think is in line with where we should all be moving forward on. And it has some other added benefits. And for those of you that are looking for careers for your children, you know, the green technology is absolutely in my mind, and this is an example of it, coming up with ideas that are taking old technology and redoing them. What could be older than garbage cans? That highly recommend you have your kids enter this industry because it will be growing over the next 20 years. That being said, thank you, Maddie, and everybody else involved, because there were a lot, Jaime, I mean, there were a lot of you, Stuart, there's a lot of staff that already left this meeting that were involved in going out there, DPW, and looking at best solution for our community. So I thank everyone for that. And unless there's more comments, I think Sue, was there
Mayor,
a comment?
I just want to make one thing, and Maddie and I have discussed this.
Oh, please.
The proposal you've seen before, you'll notice that when I read it, it talked about 8-year. What that refers to is the software package is for 8 years. And after 8 years, it would become an annual renewal. Currently, the annual renewal for the 5 doubles, I think, Maddie, is about $1,500 a year.
That's right.
Per unit?
No.
Well, no, it's 1,500. It's about approximately 200 plus per unit. It would be total 1,500 per year on an annual basis as of their current rates for the software. I just wanted the board to be aware of that, which is
Because
that
when we discussed owning it, this didn't actually, I don't think this was highlighted, right, Maddie? The
So-
software versus,
Yeah, if I may. So the units are meant to last between 8 and 12 years. So they think that we, based on our climate and all that, that we're going to get between 10 and 12 years out of them. So it still makes a lot more sense to buy it outright. I mean, the value is still tremendously higher. But after the 8 years, Stuart is correct. So if we do in fact have them for 12 years, we'll be paying out of pocket for the software to the tune of $1,500 per year for 4 years, or any time after that 8 years that they no longer work.
and is there, like so many of this IT stuff that we should have by now learned our lesson, is a guarantee that when they come out with new software, that it is automatically updated on what we're buying, rather than waiting 8 years. Like, we need a guarantee that as they develop software, they are updating what we have.
it's in their
Otherwise,
software,
you're
it's in
paying
their software, it's in the software agreement that we've already said. that I've
Okay,
already
so
reviewed.
then even in 8 years, when there is an automatic, let's call it a fee, we should be expecting the newest and greatest that they're putting out there for their clients.
That would be
Because that's part of the first 8 years to begin with, that they're supposed to, if they come up with the newest and greatest, they're supposed to automatically give that to us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So Maddie, these are the ones with the wrap, not the placards, correct?
So we haven't decided entirely on the cost, which is why we're going to have to open a capital project and do a budget transfer. I haven't gotten a chance to touch base with Jaime about exactly what she thinks makes the most sense. But again, the presentation that you all saw last week was the highest amount that it could potentially be. So if we decide that we are in fact not going to go with the wraps, and I don't know if anybody had any.
I believe it was discussed and we decided. that it
Yeah.
was the wraps.
Okay, well
Because
then.
The wraps are, the concern was about graffiti, and the wraps are graffiti proof. So I think that, if I remember correctly, I think that the board did want to go with the wraps.
Yeah, and the wraps also include one slot for insert, if I remember
Right.
correctly.
Well, we have to buy those additionally, but yes,
Yeah.
we have built everything into the original.
So I think
proposal.
Bob and Karen are correct that that was actually part of it. In this, because I'm not looking at a resolution, the prices that, are you reading out prices as well, Stuart, and all of
The
that?
price is not listed in this resolution. It'll be
Okay,
in the
so
budget
that's, so
document.
you're leaving that open till you guys solidify that. And you
Right.
need this in
The-
order
the-
to move forward.
The price we have right now is, we have the price for the double units.
Right.
We have the price for the bags. That's
Right.
all, because that's all taken out of what they, from the Massachusetts contract. So that's
Okay.
all there, including what the wrap would cost. So that's all in there.
Okay, great. The rest you're still working a little bit on, but with this, it allows you to move forward. Otherwise, it holds you up. And we really would like this for the spring, when there are more and more people outdoors. Fabulous. Any other comments, questions, thoughts, ideas?
Okay.
We're good?
Mayor, if I might, I just want to say Stuart writes a heck of a resolution. That is some impressive stuff. So I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. All
And
those
the
in-
public should know, we discussed this last week, that yes, it is coming from Massachusetts. And yes, to the people that might ask, why not a New York firm? It don't exist. This is where it is. This is where White Plains. So just, again, to have a public record, the staff did a yeoman's job in researching, figuring it out, physically going, checking things out, making sure everything works, asking White Plains. That's a subtext of the presentation, and you can see the whole thing from last week. Okay, folks.
Okay, all those in favor?
No, you have to have a motion first.
No, we
do the
did.
motion?
No, we did. I do my
Trustee-
comments after
apologize.
we get
I
the
apologize.
first and the
That's fine.
second.
So
Yeah.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Thank you, folks.
Maddie, I'm expecting major environmental points on this one.
Oh, I
that
can't
on-
wait. I
yeah,
can't wait to
put
tell
that
my
on the
CERTA and
list.
DEC. You got it.
Yeah, but that's not why we're doing it. I think it's a good solution to a problem that's been brought to us. Thank you. Okay, Sue,
Okay. New business of the board.
that
have
was, oh, I'm sorry.
No,
you're
that
right.
was continuing.
Nope,
business
that
of the
was,
board.
yep. That was-
Now we're going to new business of the board.
Okay,
Support for the New York State Senate Bill S.8432 in relation to the emergency medical services in New York State. Whereas the New York State Senator Shelley Meyer has introduced proposed legislation S.8432 entitled An Act to Amend to the General Municipal Law, the Civil Service Law, and Retirement and Social Security Law, and the Public Health Law in relation to emergency medical services, which legislations would define emergency medical services and ambulance services as essential services that must be available to everyone in New York State in a reliable manner, expand benefits available to emergency medical service personnel, and set standard for emergency medical services and training of emergency medical service personnel. And whereas the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees recognizes that many concerns related to delivery of emergency medical services throughout the country, the county, state, and nation that involve such issue as staff recruitment and retention and the lack of access to alternative revenues such as grants and adequate insurance programs, training opportunities, and clear standards for agencies providing emergency medical services. And whereas emergency medical service agencies provide an essential services that should provide equal access to those in need of such services and also provide essential early intervention health care to patients. And whereas the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees believes that S.8432 is a good first step to resolve the current crisis facing the emergency medical services community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees support the enactment of S.8432, and be it further resolved that upon approval, copies of this resolution shall be forwarded to Assemblywoman Sandy Galoff, State Senator Elijah Melnick, and State Senator Shelley Meyer, the sponsor of S.8432. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments?
Yes, actually, I would like to ask Karen, because that was something that we were talking about this morning and in the early meeting. So can you go a little bit more in detail? I don't want to chop the whole description because I think this is something that is very important, especially for OVAC. But please, Karen, fill in the blanks.
Thank you, Trustee Casada. So this is legislation that Shelley Meyer has taken up, but it's also something that I've been working on a task force with the Municipal Administrators Association on the, we take for granted that if something happens, an ambulance will show up quickly. And the reality is we're very lucky here to have OVAC. We are very, very, very lucky, but the patchwork way that emergency services are handled throughout the state actually puts a lot of people in jeopardy. And I think most people just assume the same way we assume the fire department's going to come when we have a fire, that we assume the police department's going to come, we assume there's going to be an ambulance. We have police departments, they're paid. We have fire departments, we know how hard they work. We know that they are volunteer and we are grateful for them as well. But EMS workers are not considered essential workers, nor are they structured in the same way, nor does every municipality have to provide that service. So OVAC provides not only service for us, but they go on a lot of mutual aid calls. And when they're going on a mutual aid call to Yonkers, that means they're not here. So this is a really, really important piece of legislation that will start to set the wheels in motion to, at the very least, have them designated as essential workers, but also make sure that there's, a standard of practice, a standard of pay, a standard of benefits, so that we can retain people to do these jobs. It is not a given as of today that if you call an ambulance, one's going to be able to show up. There's right now, it is a big, big problem. And I see Stuart shaking his head because I know his son is involved in this as well, an EMS worker. Again, we are just so lucky to have OVAC here, and they do an excellent job, but they're spread really, really thin. They have a hard time retaining staff. They can't provide salary and benefits that some of the other services provide. And, we want to make sure that people understand that this is important service, that we need to have it. And I think if anything, COVID proved that 10 times over. So that's the genesis of this. But it is important to know that we have a horribly, fragmented system to approach this. And it's something that I know that everyone would agree. We want to make sure it's there when needed. And this legislation hopefully will work towards making sure that that's a reality.
And thank you, Karen. That's exactly, because I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, that was one of the conversations I had with Nick. I said, what do you mean you're not an essential worker? What does that mean? So I'm glad that actually people on different levels, higher levels than us, is actually hopefully will be able to fix this broken part of the system. So I'm 100% in favor of this.
Mayor, might I just point one thing out? And I want to thank Maddie because she's been helpful to me on this. There is a piece of this legislation which will, and this again is a Senate bill. There is no assembly sponsor yet.
Right.
I bring it to the board's attention because there is a provision which says as follows: notwithstanding any law or regulation to the contrary, active members of volunteer fire and volunteer ambulance companies serving one or more municipal corporations, that would be OVAC, that would be OFD, pursuant to subdivision 7 of section 92-A, which I'll get into a second, shall be eligible for health benefits regardless of the amount of funds derived from public sources. And if you go to the section they're citing, it provides that the provisions of this section shall permit a public corporation to provide coverage for volunteer firefighters as defined in section 3 of the Volunteer Firefighter Benefit Law and volunteer ambulance workers, provided, however, that the total cost of participation by such volunteers and their families shall be borne by such volunteers. What is unclear, and Maddie was really helpful today in getting some information, is they're still working on exactly what that means in terms of who's going to be provided with the coverage. I think the idea is that it should be provided to all emergency workers. That would be fire, volunteer fire, and volunteer ambulance. But the question is, what does it mean, total cost? Does that mean that they pay without any deductible whatsoever, and basically they're paying from $1? Or is there some contribution from the municipality? They have to work that out with the controller's office. I just want the board to know that that is in the legislation right now that is proposed by the state senator.
But what we are doing is we are supporting what the state legislator. So what Shelley Meyer is doing along with others, we are not passing actual legislation here, nor do we have a say in it. This is just what they're passing, and we're in support of this concept. We're not actually passing.
You are saying that you are in support of Senate Bill 84 of the Senate bill. That's what you're saying. So again, I'm not making a judgment either way. I'm merely telling the board, I want them to be aware that that's in the law that you are saying that you support. I just want it to be, I just want that there.
So pretty much, and correct me if I'm mistaken, Stuart. So if this passes through assembly and state and everything else, at some point in time, however they figure it out, there may be a budget line that we maybe have to add, depending on what they actually figure, when they figure it out what that means.
It's very possible. I don't
But
think
that's not relevant to what we do tonight.
Correct.
You can
Correct.
vote to support this and change something. You can vote to support. What the state will figure out is what the state will figure out, whether we agree to this or not. This is more of a moral support in some ways to say, yeah, this is the right way to go. And this village at least agrees with this.
Yeah,
So
this
that
is
they can
symbolic
go and
resolution.
vote and say, 98% of the municipalities are supporting this, or 80%, or whatever it is. We're adding our name to that list.
Again, Mayor, whatever the board wants to do, I just wanted you to be aware of the language.
No, I am. I actually
Alright,
wasn't
so-
aware that those folks weren't already getting what they're supposed to. And honestly, COVID has proved, and redefined a lot of things. Look, I think in upstate New York, about an hour north of here, and for the rest of the state, there's a very different environment in fire departments,
Can I touch on that,
emergency.
please?
I'm sorry.
I'd like to touch on that because a valid point, Karen says, we are more than fortunate that we have OVAC.
Right.
Because right now, with FASB legislation, there's the Fair Play Act, which New York is the only state in the nation that does not allow fire department, ambulance corps to recoup their costs
Your insurance.
through insurance. They are not allowed to charge. All right. And there's a lot of upstate departments and Long Island. I mean, billions of dollars are lost to insurance companies that premium's paid. That money's sitting there.
Right.
All right. And they're not getting it. So this kind of somewhat relates. We just had a legislative session and it's like our #1 bill that we have on there. Just touching base. It is semi-related, but I'm in full support, whatever.
Right.
Well,
Well, it's tangential in the fact that there has to be not only a recognition of the work some people do, but look, they're giving up ability to do other things when they do this volunteer work. And in cities, a lot of this are paid positions, and they're well-paid positions. That's good. And in other countries, it's all paid. We're a little bit behind, frankly, in how we're treating this. And there's got to be some more equity in it. And I appreciate the view also about the insurance companies and what's going on. So, I mean, I'm in support of this. I have a sense where the board is going, but I also, for the record, just want to make it clear what we're actually doing here and what we're supporting. So unless there's other comments, Sue?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? If I could just make one comment, Usning and its surrounding vicinities is a step ahead with the Mid-Hudson Ambulance District, because without that, and that the taxpayers do support, but to get the, whether it be fire or ambulance corps, the ability to look for grants and other ways of revenue, it is to all of our best interests. So I thank you all for voting in favor of supporting this legislation in the state.
Yep. Thank you for that input as well. Okay.
Okay.
Where are we?
We're up to visitor recognition.
I have new business, please.
Yeah, there's a couple. Go ahead.
Okay.
So I've talked to a handful of residents, and this was also brought up at budget time about our fire horns and fire sirens. So I'm just putting it out there that I will work along with some of the people that are technology savvy in our department, being a liaison, to look into a new type of electric alerting system that will go on the firehouses as an electric horn, not a regular house siren. The horns are antiquated, as the chief stated. They work off of reeds and compressors, and you can't replace them anymore. Also discussed the option because 2:30 at night, I woke my baby up, the horn. I get it. I said maybe we can pass something that from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning, we won't blow the horns, but we have to blow the house up. Whatever. It's a work in progress. I'm just bringing it up that I'm gonna.
That's great. Well, you're working on it. You'll see if there's a solution out there. We appreciate that. For a
Especially if
decade.
you work at 16 Croton.
I was gonna say, you just made everybody at 16 Croton very happy.
Oh, that horn is going in the clerk's office, by the way.
Which is, by the way, it's right on top of the office now. For the first decade that I lived here, I thought those were ships when they passed by, that they're blowing some horn. Honest to God, I thought that's what that was.
Have you ever heard the prison siren?
Well, I hope not to hear those. Okay. So it's not really a new business. I should have announced it earlier, but I might as well do it here. We're on the continuous movement forward of the downtown revitalization initiative, better known as DRI. moving at a fast-paced clip. Every week there is at least 1 or 2 meetings. There's going to be a walking tour. I'm going to let the village manager give details about what's coming up just in the next few days. We're not going beyond like the next 7 days, the next week, because there's just a bunch of steps, and lots of work gets done, during the week. We only meet once a week. So if we want to do a quick what's coming up next, Karen, that would be helpful.
Sure. So on Saturday, we have our next local planning committee meeting for the downtown redevelopment initiative. This is a public meeting. It will be done hybrid style. So if the public would like to Zoom in, we encourage Zooming just because space is limited. We'll be having a meeting portion for about an hour at 16 Croton starting at 9 o'clock on Saturday. And that meeting should last about 45 minutes. We'll then walk over to the rec center and depending on the weather. So depending on the weather, we'll go over and do, if it's nice out, not raining too hard, we'll do a walking tour of the sites. If it is really bad weather, then we will stay at 16 Croton and we will discuss the site plans and bring everybody up to date in a virtual way, just because it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then we will reschedule a walking tour for another day when it is potentially much nicer out and more enjoyable to do so. So the public's invited to come to both the meeting and the walk, and the information will be published. You can find it on our website. It'll be on social media. And we look forward to public participation.
So for those of you that are now going to events, which were stated in the beginning, this week, and you happen to be celebrating your own way of all the different holidays, and there are a lot of people who are residents and interested parties, let them know it's on the web, and let them know about this aspect. Dana and I went on the walking tour, similar to this, with the consultants and a whole bunch of folks, and staff, of course, was there. Maddie, Jaime, Karen, I think Paul was there. I can't remember. Jaime, I think, was there. Anyway, it was great. It's what we talked about earlier with code enforcement, that walking this village just has a very different view of what's going on. It was super helpful to everybody concerned. So highly recommended if people are interested, people on this gallery, if you're walking around and talking to people, highly recommended. Okay, Sue, I think we're
Okay. We have visitor recognition. Are there any visitors here that want to be recognized with a 3-minute opportunity to address the board?
I don't see any hands.
I don't see
Okay. Are we going into executive session?
Oh, yes,
Executive
we
session for matters of personnel and then advice of counsel. Thank you, Sue.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn into executive session for a matter of personnel? And I apologize, Stuart.
and legal.
Advice of counsel.
Oh, vice of counsel. Sorry about that. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Right. I think we can vote, Sue.
All in favor?
Aye. Ladies
Opposed?
and gentlemen, oh, sorry.
That's
Thought
okay.
it
Go
was a
ahead.
lies. Folks, thank you. It is the 16th of March, 9:38, and this meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.